Monday, August 26th edition of the MMAOB Daily podcast. I'm your host, as always, Martin. I'll be taking you guys through the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Before I get into the show, of course, you guys can follow me on Twitter at MMAdamMartin. The podcast is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com. Go to our YouTube channel, please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends about it. I'd appreciate that. Also, check me out at bjpen.com and MMARings.net. So, pretty good show lined up, I think, today. I'll be talking about Bellator 225, which took place on Saturday night. A couple pieces of news to get to, and a slew of fight announcements. There are some pretty good fights coming up, and I'm looking forward to talk about them with you guys. So, let's start with Bellator 225. Arguably, Bellator's best card ever. I mean, this was a great card. 14 fights, and all fights ended by stoppage. I saw a stat saying that this was the first time a major MMA event had seen that many fights end by stoppage since UFC 2, which didn't have judges or whatever. So that's crazy. That's insane. So good job with Bellator. I even said, when I previewed this card, this would be a pretty good card. Like, the prelims were very good, and the card itself turned out to be phenomenal. So great job by Bellator. The matchmaking was good on this card. Some good finishes, a couple missed matches for sure on the main card, but definitely a solid night of fights. And I'm looking forward to getting ready and do it with you guys. So I'll start with the top and work my way down. There's a lot of fights to talk about. So I'll start with the top. Main event of the evening: Sergei Khartionov defeats Matt Mitrione via knockout in the second round. Great win by Khartionov. That's wow, that's a great win for him because he pretty much puts himself in line for a title shot, I think, against the winner of Ryan Bader and Chia Congo. This is going to depend on if Ryan Bader wants to defend that light heavyweight belt after the Congo fight, which I do think he wins, but it'll depend if he wants to stay at heavyweight or does he go back down to 205. It depends what Bellator wants to do, but I think Khartionov absolutely is next in line. Look at his record lately. It's damn good. 6-0 and 2 no contests over his last 8 fights. His only loss in his last 14 fights was that knockout to Javi Ayala in 2016, which came out of nowhere. That was his only loss. He does want a rematch. He also said he wouldn't mind fighting Fedor, but the fight he wants is a title fight. And I think at this point, he probably does deserve it. The win over Mitrione, the no contest with the low blow. And then before that, the knockout win over Rory Nelson. Khartionov looks to be in peak form right now. He is 39 years old, so he's definitely an older guy, but and he's been around forever. I remember him from Pride way back in the day. But, man, it's amazing. He's still fighting at such a high level this late into his career, this deep into his MMA journey. 15 years after debuting in Pride, he's still finishing guys in Bellator. So great performance here by Sergei Khartionov. Matt Mitrione, he looked good early, but he got caught. And the problem with Matt Mitrione in this fight was, one, his striking defense. He got clipped way too many times, but also his mouth guard. He had an ill-fitting mouth guard that kept falling out of his mouth. Got knocked out right before the knockout too. Right out of his mouth went flying. The referee went to grab it, and then Khartionov really took over. And Mitrione said that distracted him from the fight. You guy's a professional athlete. You got to have a fitted mouth guard. The amount of times I've seen fighters that didn't have fitted mouth guards in MMA is mind-boggling. I mean, when I used to train MMA, I had a fitted mouth guard, and I'm an amateur, kickboxing bum, basically. So I had a fitted mouth guard. I went to the dentist in Gane when I didn't want my teeth getting knocked out. So it's crazy that guys who step into the cage at such a high level. I know with Mitrione, he says he lost his mouth guard, so that sucks. But at the same time, come on, you're such a high-level athlete. He's making a lot of money in Bellator. Get a mouth guard, man. So for me, kind of disappointing by Mitrione. It seemed like he neglected that part of his game, and it cost him the fight in many ways because, like Big John McCarthy, the commentator, said, his mental game was not there because he was too worried about the mouth guard, and he took away from his focus on the fight itself. So he gets knocked out. Again, great win by Khartionov, but Mitrione, that's 3 straight losses now, and he really he has the no contest in there, but 0-3 and 1 no contest over his last 4. That's not good. He's got to get going. And I should say that fight closes a pick of -110 each. So Khartionov wins as a -110 pick'em fighter there. Next up, co-main event, and this unfortunately was a short notice fight because Javi Ayala had to be pulled from the card at the last minute. So Tim Johnson stepped up to fight Vitaly Minakov, and the fight pretty much went as everyone expected. Vitaly Minakov wins by first round knockout. Great performance by Minakov, bouncing back from that loss to Congo, his first career loss. The guy's legit. He's definitely one of the top contenders. I mean, really, if Bader was down to 205 again and defends that belt there, Khartionov versus Minakov makes a lot of sense too. I think there were some pictures of them circulating. They might be really good friends or something, but hey, if that's going to be for a title fight, then maybe they have to fight each other. Tim Johnson gets knocked out. He has not had a good run in Bellator, unfortunately, but I think stepping up on short notice, they'll give him another chance. But for Minakov, great win here. Minakov catches at a -275 favorite. I don't think anyone was surprised he won. Next up, Alejandro Lara defeats Taylor Turner via first round stoppage via ground and pound, 135 pounds division. This was obviously a mismatch again. Lara closes a -900 favorite. The one thing I will say about Lara is she used her platform at the weigh-ins to write on her chest about the deforestation in Brazil, which I thought was amazing. So good for her. The UFC, I don't think allows their fighters to do that. So good for Bellator for doing that, and even for promoting it. I saw Scott Coker tweeting about that and saying how they were encouraging that. So good for her. She gets the win, and she's definitely one of the top contenders still in their bantamweight division. Next up, this guy's fantastic. Yaroslav Amosov defeats David Rickles via second round Darce choke. Amosov improves to 22-0. This guy is a really good prospect, and he's really young too. He's 25 years old, so he's got a really bright future ahead of him. And at this point, I don't even think I can call him a prospect. This guy's a legitimate contender. He's won 3 straight fights in Bellator. Gerald Harris, Eric Silva, now David Rickles, and the Rickles win by stoppage. That's what he needed after the 2 decision wins to open his career. So this guy is nothing but impressive. Very high on this guy, Amosov. Rickles, I'm not surprised he got submitted in this fight. He's been finished many times in his career. Amosov, by the way, closes a -320 favorite. Opening up the main card, Tyrell Fortune defeats Rudy Skafroth via second round submission via rear naked choke. Great performance by Fortune, 7-0 now in his career. Skafroth, he had a good record coming in, but Fortune in his wrestling, man, that was the difference here. This guy's awesome too. So Tyrell Fortune, you talk about future contenders at heavyweight. This guy has to be one of them. Probably a couple wins away from a title shot, but he's on the rise and he's looking really good. Looks like another really smart signing from Bellator from the amateur college ranks and wrestling ranks, I should say. And he closes a -445 favorite. So again, no surprise there that Fortune won, but he looked really good in this fight. And then the prelims, I think, were really what the difference was from this card compared to a lot of other Bellator cards, because we've seen a lot of Bellator cards with a pretty solid main card that ended by finish most of the fights. But this preliminary card was fantastic, and I got to give Bellator a hand here. I mean, they put together a really solid slate of preliminary card fights. I'll start with the top here. Nick Newell defeats Corey Browning via first-round submission. I mean, Nick Newell's he's an amazing fighter. He's an amazing person, an amazing inspiration. We all know his story. The guy has one hand, and has a 16-2 record at MMA with one hand. That's incredible. Back-to-back wins now by submission over Antonio Castillo Jr. in CES and Corey Browning. He has that loss to Gaethje in WSOF and the loss to Alex Munoz in the Contender Series. Other than that, this guy's been unbeaten and unstoppable, and this submission game is unbelievable. Very, very different submission game, and I think a lot of guys aren't used to the way he gets his chokes, and that's why he gets a lot of finish by chokes. So great performance here by Nick Newell. He closes a -390 favorite, and by the way, he was on a 1-fight deal. And he says he wants to come back to Bellator and fight for them again. I think Bellator is interested. Scott Coker said this was a showcase fight. Corey Browning had a couple really good wins before this over Aaron Chalmers and Kevin Ferguson Jr. So this was a great win, I think, for Nick Newell over a guy that was really hot in Bellator, Corey Browning. So great win by Newell, and absolutely Bellator should bring him back. The guy is awesome. And, another guy the UFC passed on, to be fair, Dana White did give him a chance at the Contender Series, but I feel like a lot of people just overlook him because of his disability, but the guy's amazing. He really is an inspiration. His record is absolutely incredible, 60-2. That's fantastic. I'm a big fan of Nick Newell. I like him a lot. Next up, Connor Dixon defeats Castriot Zema via third-round armbar, so good for him. There was no odds for that fight. John Manley defeats Diego Reyla via third-round submission, rear naked choke. Again, no odds. John Manley, former UFC fighter. Next up, Chris Donassel defeats Mike Kimball via first-round ground and pound. No odds for this one, but I bet Mike Kimball would have been a big favorite in this fight. And this guy started off really strong Bellator, and now he's losing his fight. So I don't know what's going on with Mike Kimball, but good win for Chris Donassel. Next up, there were odds for this one. Ricky Bandejas defeats Ahmed Karetti via first-round right hook, first-round knockout, says Topology right hook, and that's what it was. I saw the clip on DAZN. I didn't watch the prelims live, but I did see this clip. Wow, what a punch. I mean, this guy walked in forward with his hands down. He got clipped, but still, the fact that Bandejas was able to knock him out with that one punch was amazing. Bandejas closes a -420 favorite. Next up, Austin Vanderford, a.k.a. Mr. Van Zandt, defeats Joseph Greer via second-round doctor stoppage. I mean, this was a bloody fight, and Vanderford looked amazing. 8-0 now, Austin Vanderford, a.k.a. Mr. Van Zandt, 29 years old. By all accounts, a great prospect. I mean, I'm very impressed with this guy. I've been fighting as a pro since 2017, undefeated. Last couple wins by stoppage, last 5 wins by stoppage, actually, including a winner on the Contender Series, and I've talked about this. Why did the UFC pass on this guy? I don't get it. I still think it has something to do with Paige VanZant wanting to test free agency, or maybe the Paige VanZant not liking the way the UFC's treated her lately. But I don't know. It's just weird. Like, this guy's really good, and Bellator picked up a really good prospect in Austin Vanderford. Very impressive performance. The guy's a great prospect, man. I'm very, very excited to see his future in Bellator. He is a middleweight. They need middleweights, and he looked amazing. So great performance by Vanderford. Next up, Sabah Homasi defeats Mika Terrell via first round knockout for 17 seconds into the first round. This was another great knockout. You can see the clip on I think it's on Bellator DAZN's Twitter, but it was amazing. Great finisher by Sabah Homasi. He needed this win, man. This guy had a chance in the UFC. Did not work out for him. 3 straight lockout losses, but since then, back-to-back wins. The guy definitely has some knockout power. A lot of his wins in his career by stoppage, by KO, and this was a great one here over Mika Ciryl. Sabah Homasi closes a -210 favorite. And after the fight, he did call out Austin Vanderford, but I just don't know if that fight happens because they're in different weight classes. Maybe if Homasi moves up, but I don't see Vanderford being able to make 170. There's no way. He's a huge guy. I think, if anything, Vanderford might move up to 205 eventually when he grows into his frame a little bit more. But he's definitely middleweight. Homasi's a welterweight. So unless Homasi wants to move up, it's kind of a weird call out. But either way, great performance by Sabah Homasi. Next up, another amazing finisher. Aviv Gonzalez defeats Edward Muravitsky via first round heel hook 11 seconds into the fight. He went over, ran across the face, did an Minari roll, and got the submission right away. It looked like Ryan Hall-esque. Amazing performance by this guy. I don't know much about him, but man, what a performance. 3-0 now in his career. 3 wins by stoppage, by submission in Bellator since making his debut in 2018. They do a lot of events in Israel. He is a Jewish fighter. They do a lot of events there. I absolutely expect him to be a prominent fighter on their next card in Israel. Great performance here. Record-setting performance. Fastest submission in Bellator history. And last but not least, opening up the card, Karani Gracie defeats Oscar Vera via first-round submission by armbar. Another great performance here by Gracie by submission. Of course, that always happens. And, man, what a great card. Like, really, Bellator did a good job with this one, guys. You know, I know a lot of people don't like Bellator. They think it's second-rate MMA. In many ways, it is. I mean, UFC is still the top promotion, but this was a fantastic card, a card that was being slept on by a lot of people. I am glad I ended up watching this card. I wasn't planning on it, to be honest with you. I was going to take the day off, but I came home and, I was like, whatever, I'll just watch it. And it turned out to be a great card. So good stuff, and very impressive performances by all the fighters in the card and by the matchmaker, Rich Chow. We got to give some mad respect. I mean, Rich Chow's an amazing matchmaker. Strike Force, Rumble on the Rock. He's been around forever. And, of course, Scott Coker, who continues to put on great fights in Bellator. I mean, listen, I miss Strike Force too, like the rest of us, but I think he's actually starting to really get his hang of things in Bellator, and they've announced some pretty good fights coming up, which I'll get to in 1 second here. But I just want to talk about a few pieces of news before I do. One thing I want to mention was the bantamweight division of the UFC, Frankie Edgar. And Frankie wants to fight Conor McGregor. He posted something on his social media about basically a quote. Conor said that he has a lot of respect for Frankie, which I did hear this quote. He basically said that, he has nothing but respect and that he'd like to fight him at some point. So that's a fight I would like to see, but I just don't see it making sense right now because Frankie's going down to 135. Conor has a lot of issues right now, and I think he's going to stay at 155. And then speaking of bantamweights, Aljamain Sterling, he wants a fight. Clearly, he can't wait for Henry Cejudo because we don't know when Cejudo's even going to come back. And Sterling wants to fight anyone in the top 10. He called them all out. And I think at this point, he's going to have to fight some of them. One of them, I don't know who it's going to be. Maybe Peter Yan, maybe Corey Sandhagen. But it looks like Henry Cejudo is probably going to fight Joseph Benavidez next. So Sterling's like, you know what? I need to get another fight. Any of those guys work. Frankie Edgar works. Uriah Faber works. Any of those guys. He needs one more win, I think, at this point, probably to get a title shot. Although, in my opinion, he does deserve it. It's just that the UFC really feels like Benavidez has been waiting a long time. He has, so it's hard to disagree with that. And Cejudo has to defend that flyweight belt, or else he has to give it up. Now let's get to the fight announcements. There were a lot of them, so bear with me here. But there's some good fights coming up. I'll start with the Bellator fights because today was the Bellator-centered show. Now there's 2 fights that Bellator announced. One of them is really good, and they're both rematches, by the way. One of them is really good, and one of them is I don't know why they're announcing this fight. And I'm going to start with that one. Rory Nelson versus Frank Mir 2 at Bellator 231. That's the main event, 3-round fight. This is in October. I don't know why they booked this fight. I mean, I get it. Like, there's limited heavyweights in the sport, especially in Bellator. But, man, I remember this fight from UFC 130, and it was an awful fight. I'm pretty sure Rory Nelson was sick or something, but it's still a terrible fight. And Frank Mir He won the fight by decision. It was an awful fight though, and I just don't see the rematch going any differently. I mean, I guess there could be a knockout. Both guys, obviously, their chins are fading, and both guys do have some KO power, but I'm not looking forward to this one, guys. I got to be honest. I don't think this is a headline-worthy fight. It's a very meh matchup, in my opinion. I don't know why they're just using the main event a card with this fight. I saw the fans, what they were saying, and no one seems to be too excited for this one. So had to mention it because they announced the fight. But Rory Nelson versus Frankie are two guys in their 40s, two guys on losing streaks. I think that's kind of a weak main event, to be honest. But now a fight that's a great main event. It's another rematch. Douglas Lima versus Rory MacDonald too. And we all knew this fight was going to happen because they both made it to the finals of the Bellator welterweight Grand Prix. And this is an amazing fight. I mean, Douglas Lima is an incredible fighter and really one of the most underrated fighters in the sport, especially in the welterweight division. But I just think in the sport in general, he is so underrated. 31-7 record. And look at his record in Bellator. I'm going to count it right now. It's 3, 8, 11, 13-3. I mean, that's a great record. Coming off back-to-back stoppage wins over Page and Koreshkov. His last loss was to MacDonald in January 2018. He lost the decision. He lost his belt. But since then, he's looked unstoppable. And Rory MacDonald has looked like he's got some holes in his game lately. He's actually just 1-1 in his last 3 fights. He got his face smashed in by Gator Sauce. He had middleweight, so give him a pass there. But the John Fitch fight was a terrible performance by Rory MacDonald. He got lucky, squeaked by with the majority draw. And then the Neiman Gracie fight was really good. And I did think he'd win that fight. Just I thought the experience would be the difference. But I feel like maybe Douglas Lima's catching Rory at a good time here. This is a really interesting fight to call. I'm very curious to see what the odds are for this one. I think a lot of people actually will be betting on Rory MacDonald. Actually, the odds are out, by the way. I'm just checking right now. The odds are out. They opened, I guess, yesterday. And they opened at Douglas Lima minus 185 and Rory MacDonald at plus 145. So, wow. And right now, Lima's minus 175, MacDonald's plus 135. So, I guess I'm not surprised. I mean, I do think people will be betting on Lima because a lot of people are fading Rory MacDonald right now. But at the same time, Rory has the win over Douglas Lima. Rory is an amazing fighter. He's the champion. I'm a little surprised, I guess, that the odds are this way. I thought it'd be a lot closer. I think they will get a little bit closer. I know people are fading Rory. They're down on him right now, but still, plus 135 for the champ. You don't see that too often. So that's a fight I got to think about a little bit more, but I am surprised the odds are the way they are, to be completely honest. That is a little bit surprising. I'm just seeing them for the first time right now. Anyways, great fight. I'm looking forward to the rematch for that. That's a Bellator 232. That's the day after Bellator 231. That's a 5-round title fight, of course. Now let's get into some UFC fight announcements. There are some good fights coming up, and I absolutely love this fight. UFC 245, Matt Brown will be taking on Ben Saunders. Wow, what a great fight. Love both these guys, two of my favorite fighters. And they were both on, I think, the Ultimate Fighter season 6. I remember them from way back in the day. So, yes, Team Hughes versus... Is that the card? Well, Ben Saunders was on that one. Yeah, I mean that's. Let me double check with Matt Brown. Which season was he on? Matt Brown was on. Oh, he's on the Ultimate Fighter 7. Okay, Matt Brown was on the Ultimate Fighter 7, and yeah, okay. So Ben Saunders was on Ultimate Fighter 6. Matt Brown on Ultimate Fighter 7. That's okay. But either way, two guys have been around forever. Two guys that are definitely on the downside of their careers, but still so much fun to watch. Ben Saunders coming off 3 straight finishes against him, which is unfortunate because great guy. I love Ben Saunders, but man, he's lost 5 of his last 6 fights, 4 of them by knockout, the other one by submission. He did have that win over Jake Ellenberger, though, that showed that, hey, this guy still has some dangerous Muay Thai. We know his ground game's really good. Great fighter. And then Matt Brown, he's actually coming off a great win over Diego Sanchez by knockout. Before that, had lost 3 straight fights by finish. So 2 guys that really need to get bounced back with a win here. Matt Brown hasn't fought since November 2017. That's a long time ago. Ben Saunders, he fought earlier this year. He got knocked out. I don't know how this one's going to go. We'll see. I mean, if Ben Saunders can get it to the ground, he probably can get a submission, but because Matt Brown's been submitted so many times in his career, 10 submission losses. But if the fight stays on the feet, I think Ben Saunders could be in trouble here. Matt Brown with 13 wins by knockout. Ben Saunders been knocked out 8 times. That could be a problem. Both guys older. Ben Saunders 36, Matt Brown 38. We'll see what happens. Someone's getting finished, though. And that card, man, that card's looking good. There's a rumor that the main event or co-main event, I'm not sure, could be Volkanovski versus Max Holloway, but I want to get some confirmation before I talk about that fight, although definitely it looks like that's going to be in that card. Now, a couple other announcements to talk about here. UFC Singapore got 3 different fights, and I like all these fights. First up, Stevie Ray versus Michael Johnson. Stevie Ray and Michael Johnson, both guys that haven't looked good at times, but both need wins. Stevie Ray, he's lost 3 of his last 4 fights. He got knocked out by Leonardo Santos in his last fight. He's definitely looking on the decline, unfortunately. Michael Johnson here, he is, he's coming off a knockout loss against Josh Emmett. Before that, won 2 straight fights. He actually looked good in the Emmett fight until knockout, so we'll see what happens here. But the way he got knocked out was definitely concerning. It was, I think, the second knockout loss of his career, actually. But really the first one that was like a one-punch, nasty finish like that. The other was to Gaethje, where he kind of just got overwhelmed. So we'll see what happens. Maybe his chin's fading, but I still definitely have to favor Michael Johnson in this fight. Next up, a heavyweight bout between Maurice Greene and Sergei Pavlovich. Another good fight here. Greene, the crochet boss. He is on a 3-fight win streak. He's looked amazing in the UFC, coming off a knockout win over Junior Albini. I didn't expect him to look this good in the UFC. He's 33 years old now. He's just looked awesome. So good for him. He has the win over Jeff Hughes, the other win over Michael Batista. I've been very impressed with Maurice Greene. And he takes on Sergei Pavlovich here. Sergei Pavlovich coming off a really nasty knockout win over Marcelo Gone. Before that, had lost to Overeem by knockout in his first fight in the UFC, and the biggest step up in his career. And that was a bad match, I think, for Pavlovich, but he definitely has a lot of KO power, and this is an interesting fight. I kind of lean towards Pavlovich. I think Greene could get caught here, but Greene's definitely looked good, so this could go either way, like most heavyweight fights can. And the other heavyweight fight announced for UFC Singapore, Ciryl Gane versus Dontel Mays. I'm a little surprised they did this fight because we know that the UFC doesn't have a ton of heavyweight prospects, so I'm a little surprised they matched up 2 of them right here this early in their career. But either way, Gane, he's 4-0. He had that win over Rafael Pessoa, looked really good in that fight. All 4 wins by stoppage since entering MMA as a pro last summer. So this guy is on the fast track right now in his career. He's looked great, and he takes on Dontel Mays. Pulling up Dontel Mays right now. In a heavyweight bout. Dontel Mays, 7-2 record. He is coming off a win over Ricardo Prassel on the Contender Series. Got the first round stoppage. He's on a 4-fight win streak. He's been on the Contender Series twice. He won 3 times actually. He's won 2 of the fights. Lost the other to Alan Crowder, but since then he's looked great. This is gonna be a good fight, but I think I have to favor Gane a little bit. I just think he's a higher level prospect, although Mays obviously has KO power. And the last fight announcement to talk about, UFC Tampa gets a matchup between Hector, Aldana, and Miguel Baeza. Hector Aldana, pulling him out. He's 4-2 in the UFC. He's 4-2 in MMA. He's 0-2 in the UFC. And the weird thing about him is he had that Ultimate Fighter stint on Latin America too. He lost in 2015 to Enrique Martin on the show. And then he took 3 years off, came back, lost his Kenan Song, and then lost to Lariano Staropoli in his last fight, which was a really good fight. I think that one fight of the night. So it's kind of weird he's getting another fight, I think. Just he hasn't looked that great, but I guess his last fight was pretty good. So maybe that's why. Takes on Miguel Baeza here, 7-0. He's coming off a win over Victor Reina on the Contender Series. It was an amazing fight. One of the best fights of the summer in that show. So I definitely have to favor Baeza. I think the guy's a really high-level prospect. Great signing by the UFC. I'm looking forward to seeing him fight in the UFC. And I think this is a really good matchup and a very winnable fight for Miguel Baeza. So definitely some good fights coming up. I love that Ben Saunders Matt Brown fight. UFC 245. I just want to talk about that one quickly. I think I'm going to be going to this card. I mentioned this the other day on last week's podcast. Sad enough, I've never been to Vegas to watch a fight. So you know what? This will be probably the first time I'm going, and I'm really hoping they do have that Volkanovski Holloway fight. If not Diaz versus Masvidal, if not Jones versus Blachowicz or someone else. So there's a lot of fights coming up. We'll see what happens. And also UFC 244 is rumored to be headlined between Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman. I want to get confirmation about that before we talk about that fight, but it's definitely looking like the rumor for that one for the main event. So, and I think everyone knew that was going to happen. So we'll see what happens as far as UFC confirming that, but right now it's looking like the case. So definitely some good fights coming up. And we'll start, by the way, with this weekend, this Saturday at 3 in the morning, I believe. Jessica Andrade takes on Weili Zhang at UFC China, and I will be breaking down that card tomorrow in full with my buddy Cole Shelton. He'll be joining me. Not a great card, that one isn't, but you know what? Who knows? Sometimes these cards do surprise, the ones where we don't know a lot of the fighters, and that main event and the co-main event are both fantastic fights. So maybe that card's going to be better than we thought. I'll talk about it tomorrow with Cole, but until then, guys, thanks for tuning in to the show. I'll be back tomorrow breaking down the latest in the world of mixed martial arts. Follow me on Twitter at MMAOB Martin. This podcast is available at MMAOddsbreaker.com. Check me out at bjpen.com and MMARings.net. Guys, have an amazing day. I'll be back tomorrow morning talking about the latest in the world of MMA. See ya.